To run a LayerCake program, I use the LC command along with a list of layers. I'll run the program editor and a unit converter sample, which I'll run in dynamic mode. We'll see the window for the program editor here and the unit converter sample over here. I'll go right to the main type for the unit converter, the class unit converter, and it is composed of 3 layers, the model layer, the extended model, and the Swing UI layer, which we see in this browser as well as up top. I can change properties of the object just on the fly, and let's look at the current converter property. This is a data binding expression, and I'll switch into instance mode. So in instance mode, we're looking at the values for one instance, and here I see the current value is temperature, but when I change it here, it becomes distance, and that's implemented via this data binding expression, which is a forward binding with the colon equals operator, and it uses the selected index from the current combo box, and when that changes, it pulls out the converter and assigns it to current converter in a declarative fashion. Let's look at some more data binding expressions. If I go into the model, I can look at the data binding, a bidirectional binding between value 2 and value 1. So this is colon equals colon, and when I change one value, the top one, the other one changes, and when I change the first one, this one changes, and that's because we're using a bidirectional binding. If I just used colon equals, then it would only go from the top to the bottom, and if I used equals colon, then it would only change from the bottom to the top. Reverse bindings are also used just to invoke a method when a property changes. So in that case, you're not really propagating a value, you're just running that expression. The extended model layer is just adding a few more converters, and let's switch to code view here to take a look at that. This is a purely declarative layer where we're modifying the unit converter type, we're modifying the converter subobject, and then we're adding 3 new converters. And in code view, these are all, we've got command line completion, and it's all highly structured, and I can make changes here, and they're applied in real time. And synchronized back again with form view. So let's add a new layer, and I'll add a layer called style A, and this actually pulls in 2 layers. So if I go back to the unit converter object, you'll see that there's a new style A layer here, and then also a style layer that style A pulled in, and then style is on top of the original Swing UI layer we were looking at before. And style A is a transparent layer, so we see the properties that are set here in style A directly, and then I see grayed out the properties that it inherits from the style layer. If I go to code view, and I'll turn on merged mode, so we see all the files that make up the unit converter from this layer on. So here's style A, and it just sets these properties, and then in the style layer that it inherits from, it sets even more. So with the transparent layer, you can create a template for customization that you can then lazily fill in, which is a very convenient way to customize applications. So another thing you can do with layers is you can remove them. So if I delete the style layer, the appearance goes back to normal. Or I can delete the entire application layer itself, and when I delete the model layer, it deletes all the layers on top of it. So the whole application goes, and then I'll add a different application. This is an expert system for decision making. You answer a bunch of questions, and it gives you advice on how to make the decision. So let's go to the main component, the Analyze Situation component. And first I want to go into the View menu and show how I can filter the types based on 2 different dimensions. One is based on the code type. So here I can just show just the declarative files. So this is the style and sort of the base level types that make up that type. And these are just simple property sheet type objects that are designed to be declarative. Then I can also show just the code that makes up the user interface. So here we're looking at just the UI types. Or I can show just the style settings. So these are just the properties that are broken out for styling. Or I can show just the domain model. And the domain model is the business piece of the application. So taking a look at the factor value, this is an enumerated type, and I'll go to code view and turn on merge mode, and you see that the code piece is here to define what makes up a factor value, and then the business logic is separate in a separate layer for defining the names. And this is similar for the leadership style layer. And then the situational factor is also the same pattern, but here it's using the template language because there's these large sections of text that have new lines and formatting characters. So the template language lets you mix LayerCake code with freeform text, similar to JSP, but even more flexible, and it has still sort of the same structure tooling and things that you get from working in a high-level language. Going to the situation object, this breaks out the actual rule for what makes a good decision, and this is a nested set of switch statements which match directly the problem, the way we're given the problem. So it's a highly declarative format, but without having to go into a whole DSL. Instead, it's just a snippet of code that the programmer can create, and it still benefits from all the high-level typing and strong typing that you get, and debuggability that you get with using Java-like language. So that's it for the basic demo of LayerCake.